Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about my process. I have a bunch of images and slides to show you guys, and I'm just going to kind of go through my artistic journey. So I'm going to share the screen. Um, I always have to start by explaining a little bit of my background. My family, I come from a line of artists. So my mom is an amazing painter. She has a one woman play. She writes books. Like she's just a creative powerhouse. And her mother was born in Japan and didn't start painting until her 50s, but is also an incredible painter. Won the who's who's of women in art from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Like incredible. So I have let's see. So this is my mom's work, and she does a lot of multimedia stuff, a lot of oil painting. So I grew up watching her paint and create. She's also an interior designer. So I have a lot of exposure from just growing up in such an artistic household. And then my grandmother, this is one of her pieces. So a lot of her influences come from Japan, of course, where she lived until she was in her 20s and then came over post World War II. And she's still alive. She still paints a little bit. She's like 92 now. So they're both really incredible and very big influences on my work and just how I view artwork and talk about it. And I think we get our inspiration from really similar sources, which is mainly nature and kind of how we experience nature, kind of take those experiences and then infuse them into our artwork. So it's really interesting to kind of see that line of work. Um, I love painting, but I mostly focus on sculpture. So I started a series of sculptures starting in college, or really right before college. I went to PAFA, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art. Um, but the semester before I began at PAFA, I actually went to Greece. The Aegean School of Fine Arts in Greece is on a small island in the Aegean, on an island called Paros. So I spent a semester there where I was painting and exploring and really, again, kind of allowing myself to be in nature and really experiencing all of those different landscapes and started to miss working with clay. I began working with clay in high school. I went to a performing and fine arts middle school and high school where I was able to take ceramics classes. So that was really my introduction to ceramics. And then when I went to Greece and started at PAFA, my focus was more on painting, but I started to really miss sculpture. So early on in my career at PAFA, I began exploring. I got some clay and I started making these sculptures. So I start with one large block of clay and then I like pull, stretch, and manipulate them until I make these forms. So here's a few versions. I got really obsessed with this. I'm a very consistent worker, I guess, and so I deal with the same themes over a long period of time. I don't have that many major shifts. I'm working on it. So over my entire time at PAFA, I began exploring these. Um, Sorry, it's taking a second to load here. So I began obsessively making these and really more interested in form than anything else and just what I could do to kind of stretch the medium and push myself. Um, in 2016, I believe, I went on a residency in Oregon with my two very close friends who are also artists. And along the way, we stopped and camped at different national parks. So we kind of extended the residency just by doing a road trip. And so this is a picture of Yellowstone where we kind of got our inspiration for the final piece that we were going to make. We along the way gathered plants and naturally dyed them with this fiber here. And then I made sculptures by digging clay, processing it, and we built the loom and kind of created this. this experience really got me thinking more about how I want to translate my experiences in nature to my work. So I really wanted to start building in a way that reflected what I was experiencing outside, kind of the awe and the just the massive inspiration that I was taking, and the way that it really helped me just mentally be outside. So I started thinking about my work in terms of installation. I wanted to build large scale. I wanted that feeling of like overwhelming awe to translate into my work from the smallest detail to having more large scale. So I started thinking of these as modular sculptures so they can be seen alone, standalone on a coffee table, or they can be seen in larger scale. Um, I go back and forth between working very intuitively and abstract to working a little bit more directly and realistically. So this is a lithograph, and I would sit outside, do plein air paintings, and kind of translate my work from two-dimensional, kind of really looking at the source and concentrating on what I see, to then bringing it back into the studio. I should say along the way, if anybody has any questions or you want me to go into anything more, of course, feel free to ask. Um,
Can you tell me
so,
about the process
oh,
of lithography? I'm a little bit unfamiliar with it, but it has to do with a stone, right?
it does, yeah. I'm no lithography or printmaking expert, but lithography is the process of transferring an image on a stone to paper. So a lithography stone is a special type of limestone, and you can draw on it just as you would a piece of paper. It's really beautiful to draw on. And then there's a chemical process that I am not skilled enough to explain, but there's a chemical process where then you can print it over and over again onto paper. And that's how a lot of images in the early 19th century and 20th century were.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that
Yeah.
print was beautiful that you just showed. Do you have your own equipment and supplies for that, or do you go to a facility to do that?
So that piece I did at PAFA when
Okay.
I was in school. So unfortunately, I have very limited experience, but I do like that piece, and it feels like it's still relevant in my work. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so while at school, I started dealing with some pretty significant chronic pain issues. When I was 11, I had a tumor in my spine, and I had to have surgery to remove it. It grew back about 4 months later, and I had to have it removed again. So since I was about 11 years old, I've suffered from pretty severe chronic pain from nerve damage from the surgery. Um, and so when I'm a little bit of a workaholic, a little bit obsessive about my work. And so I think I just started to overdo it in the studio. And I actually lost pretty much completely, I lost use of my arms and hands for about 4 months while I was in studio, working on this large installation piece. So I
That
had
was when you were at PAFA? Sorry for interrupting. Oh my goodness.
So it was my last year at PAFA. I was preparing for my thesis show, and it was I was really glad that I had been working all up until that point on these sculptures, because I really had to completely stop. I could hardly hold a pencil. So I started working on these paintings and working a lot slower. Um, and so I then was painting and drawing a lot, moving pretty slowly. And then I got interested in paper cutting. So this is an example of, I did a watercolor on Mylar and then started cutting it out. This was still painful for me, but it was a little bit easier than sculpting. Here's another one. And so really thinking about intricacy, delicacy, and entangled forms, which is kind of my theme. Hello. And so, yeah, I started pretty small and then began working larger and larger. And this piece was, I don't know, pretty big. Um, and through that, got really interested in shadow and kind of moving back into a sculptural realm. So being inspired by the shadows it was casting and kind of the three dimensionality that I could make with the paper. Um, at the end of the year, I was starting to feel a little bit better, and so I began working on my installation. Um, this is the wire form that I view also as a separate sculpture, or that could be standalone, but this is kind of what I view as the skeleton to my work. So again, I really enjoy building modularly because that's how like I can physically make it work for myself, I guess. So I build the wire sculptures, the steel sculptures, by welding them and kind of twisting them and bending them. Um, and then this is about 3 or 4 different sections of wire that entangle together. Um, and then this is the final product. So this was at my thesis show. It's about, I would say, around 15 feet tall. Um, and so again, this kind of shows the culmination of the work. Again, building it slowly over many, many years. It took about 3 or 4 years to build all of these pieces. And then I stacked them all and created this. Since then, I really wanted to focus on my ceramic work. So, of course, you have to make money, and it's a lot easier to sell functional work and mugs and bowls and plates than it is to sell abstract sculptures. So, I joined Blackhound Clay Studio in West Philly. They are amazing, and so I have studio space there and 24-hour access. So, I started to really explore functional pottery. I'm mostly self-taught when it comes to ceramics. At PAFA, I was a sculpture major, but they didn't have a ceramics department. So exploring form and throwing on the wheel has been mostly a self-taught exploration. I, of course, then had to turn the functional into non-functional again because I think I'm a sculptor at heart and really appreciate abstract work. So I started making bowls, and then I was like, what happens if I cut holes in them? And again, going back to that entanglement, the intricacy, the delicacy, and really taking forms that I find in nature and translating onto the clay. So with this process, I throw the form on the wheel, and then when it's leather hard, I will make a very quick intuitive drawing onto the clay. And I don't really pre-plan at all. I just kind of do a quick drawing, and then I take a single X-Acto blade, and I just very carefully and slowly cut each piece of clay out to create that design. And again, I'm really focused on stretching myself in the craft. There's, I'm sure, a lot I don't know. I feel like you can spend a lifetime working with clay and never really know how to do things. So I started stretching myself by making double-walled vessels like this, so thrown in one piece where I take the inner wall, build up, take the outer wall, and then connect it. And enjoyed that because you can really, I think it highlights the piece and the cutouts more than distracting when it's all around. And then I, of course, have to go back and forth between, I really, interdisciplinary art is really important to me. I'm also, when I was younger, I was acting, I was singing, dancing very poorly. So I believe that having kind of a well-rounded artistic vision and artistic life can be really important in terms of just each medium kind of informs the other, right? So now, even though I'm mostly focused on ceramics, I do still paint. And then, I'll make a cup, but then I'll cut it, do a cutout, and then I'll make a sculpture so that it's all sort of circulating and I'm not just stuck on one thing. Maybe I just get bored quickly, and this is my excuse for that. I don't know. So playing with these sculptures, again, the main difference here is the color, right? So before I was focused primarily on form, and I really enjoyed the white clay and kind of having that bone, you know, thinking about the body, thinking about kind of the skeletal structure when I was building. And now I'm kind of just practicing with playing around with color. So this piece is, and the last piece was raku fired. And that's a process where you are heating up the clay really quickly. And then while it's still glowing red hot, you take the lid off the kiln and you remove the clay and put it into either like a chamber where you can either oxidize it or reduce the oxygen to create different effects in the glazes. So it's a really fun and exciting process. Um, this piece was wood fired, so that's a different kind of firing process where I put the clay into a kiln that goes really hot. It has to be continuously stoked for over 27 hours. So I had the 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift last time I did a wood firing, and you never know what's going to happen. You know, the smoke and the salt and all of the glazes kind of swirl around in the atmosphere to create different effects. So that's kind of been the more recent exploration. Again, this is raku fired. What's exciting about this is you really never know what's going to happen. So I'm still learning a lot about the different glazes and things that I can achieve with these firing processes. This is my most recent installation / iteration of this sculpture. This is at the Mainline Art Center, and it will be up until October, I believe. And again, this is using a lot of those same pieces that I had originally. When I built this, the dream is to like be inside of it, right? I want like a huge giant sculpture that's, you know, bigger than I can imagine. And so I built this knowing that I wanted to be able to reform it and re-explore it over and over again in different ways. So I'm always building these pieces and kind of building up my stock, and then I'll sell some sculptures or install it somewhere. And it really feels like a puzzle or some sort of, it's just fun. It's a very playful process. It's very physical, of course, but every time I have to decide, how is this wire going to fit together? Where is the work going to go? How is it going to look? And having it outside is really exciting to me because I had never put it outside before. And of course, that's where I'm getting a lot of the inspiration for these pieces. So even though it's not completely in nature, it's one step closer to kind of the vision. Yeah.
So is that just clay and wire in there?
Yep.
Okay. Are you afraid of like the rain and thunderstorms or anything breaking it? Or is there wire like inside the clay as kind of a skeleton?
No, there's no armature inside. Clay is pretty strong, and if it was in the winter, I would be nervous about cracking. But since
Oh
it's
yeah.
warm, I'm not worried about that. The way that I built this wire structure and the clay forms, they really interlock. I have little spikes and things like small, just the way that the wire sits. The clay, the ceramic pieces, like they're friends. They kind of sink into it, even though they're hard. They kind of fit in so that they're pretty secure. And then I do tie each one to the or the steel structure to secure it. And then I also, for this piece, I have um, rebar in the ground where the structure is also connected to. The way that it's fit against the building, it should be it should be secure because it's quite heavy and it's quite, yeah, just the way that it is, it's pretty strong. So unless something really terrible happens, in which case I will cry many tears, but it should be okay.
But you
Yeah,
can always make more, right? That's the thing.
that's great.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that you take your inspiration from nature and you're putting this work of art in nature. That's a really cool concept. I want to see like a huge installation in the middle of a forest that you need to walk to or something like that.
That is definitely the dream and the goal. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love that. And then someday I want it so big that like you can climb in it and sit inside of it and like be part of it, like, someday.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
On top of the artistic practice, I also teach art. I really, really enjoy teaching, and I find that that's been really amazing for my inspiration and just it's been very life-giving to teach. So during the pandemic, I've taught online, and I just teach mostly meditative art classes. So that's this next slide, just a little piece of work. A lot of beginner classes, but really helping people that haven't explored art very much really get in touch with their creativity and just the meditative aspect of art, because I find art to be kind of my therapy, and all of my processes are so intuitive. And so showing people, giving them the tools that they need to use the mediums and then be able to translate what's inside of them and in a really relaxed environment. Um, and so I teach all ages. I love working with kids and I love working with, yeah, everybody. So that's also been a dual focus while I'm doing my studio practice and then helping others along in that practice as well. Yeah. And there's my information. So those are the ways you can find me, follow my work, and connect. Yeah.
That was
But
great. You have some really
that's
beautiful stuff.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Uh, you mentioned earlier that you're going to be at an upcoming artists and artisans market at Cherry Street Pier. When is that?
That is on July 2nd. They're doing Friday evenings.
Yes, first Friday.
Yep, yep. So Friday the 2nd. I have a lot of upcoming shows. This weekend, I will be at the Mainline Art Center where this piece is installed. They are doing a market with the Haverford Guild of Craft. So that the way I support myself as an artist is to do these fairs and events, which I'm really, really, really happy that they are actually happening again. And I get to connect with people in person. So I have that show on the 12th, and then almost every weekend I'm somewhere. So if you ever want to connect with me in person, I usually post about that online. Yeah.
Yeah, you seem really busy. You seem like a powerhouse. It's hard as for artists sometimes to like have that grasp on the business side of things. So that's really cool.
Yeah, the business side of things, I am like, it's so difficult to navigate, and I wish people would talk about that more,
They should
especially.
have classes in school for it, shouldn't they?
We had a couple workshops on it, but I mean, I just recently, got my tax ID and business registration and
Oh,
all of that, and
cool.
like, it took so it's so difficult to navigate on your own.
Yeah.
So for anyone, if anyone here is an artist, I actually started compiling a document of different art events and fairs and pop-ups in the Philadelphia region. So
Wow.
I'm giving that out to help other artists because I've spent a minimum of like 40 hours just researching shows. And I don't think anyone should have to go through that. So, yeah, I think as artists, we need to share our resources and help each other out because it is very challenging. As I know a lot of people have a lot of trouble with the business side of things. So, yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Do you have a day job or are you a full-time artist?
Well, I have 4 jobs right now.
Okay. Been
Yeah, I
there.
work. Yep, yep. But it's all art related. So I do consider
That's
myself a
great.
full-time artist. So
Right. You,
I'm
you
not,
said you teach. Yeah. And
yeah.
and you
So,
work at Global Dye Works. Can you talk more about that?
yeah, so I work for Drippy Pots, Brian Janewski, if you know him. He was a resident at the Clay Studio a few years back, and he makes really fun, very lush, functional work. So Drippy Pots is the name of his company, and so I'm a productionist there. So I am still working with clay, which is really nice. We do slip casting. So I'm there 2 or 3 days a week. I teach online on the weekends, and I do like paint party events online as well, many evenings. And then I run my own business. And then I'm going to start teaching clay classes this summer at Black Hound, my studio. So I'm going to be doing workshops and the kids camp. And I was just talking to an archaeologist about going on helping on some archaeological digs. So
What?
um, yeah, I'm going to go
Where?
out Point Pleasant, Pennsylvania. It's about an hour away. And if I heard him correctly, he's digging up artifacts from about 12,000 years ago, which
Wow.
I have to check if that's the correct number because that just, yeah. So it's a site, and they're digging up tools. It was a resource site, so the people were going there to collect this very specific type of stone and make tools with.
Wow.
So I'm hustling, I'm always looking for ways to create and sustain myself and run the business and pay the
That's
rent.
great.
Yeah,
You should
it's a
teach a
lot of
class in
fun.
that alone.
Right? Yeah, yeah. I would love that, honestly. I don't know how much information I have to share, but any information I have is out there. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to definitely reach out to you and see if perhaps you'd like to get involved with the Portside Arts Center and perhaps teach some class virtual or in person in the future. You know, your art is beautiful and your sculpture and your attitude and everything is really very impressive.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I would love to work with you guys. It sounds like you have a really amazing thing going, so I look
Yeah, I
Yeah.
forward
look
to
forward to
talking more
meeting
about
you at the artist market. I will be
it. Yeah,
there.
And we have some stuff
awesome.
right now. Claudia has a piece. I have a piece, and three other of our teachers have pieces at the Atelier. It's the Philadelphia Contemporary showing at Atelier. It's called Unfolding, and they have hours. I think Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we're going to take the kids down there today at 2 and show them. We have 32 kids that have a piece of art there that was in a collaboration of records with mica and resin. So if you have
That's
a
really
chance to check it out, there's some really cool artists, past
Cherry
and
Street
present
Pier
Cherry Street Pier
residents.
artists.
Yeah.
So there's some really
good.
really cool stuff there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah.
Um, I should mention I've got to plug all the places I'm at. I'm also in a show with In Liquid right now. Their show currently is up.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
think
that's at the Crane?
yes, yes. So this
Okay.
piece is there.
Rachel.
Feels the need to see it in person, and I got a sneak peek at the show, and it looks like there's some really incredible work there. So
When is that going
yeah,
up?
and it's already up, so I think it should be. I don't know when it's coming down, honestly. I have so many dates in my head. It's probably up for a short while longer.
Okay, great.
Sorry, I don't have that date, but yeah, wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any more questions? All right. Well, Kiya, it was such a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to meeting you in person very soon. It was a great talk. You
Yeah,
have beautiful work.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's you're an amazing
thank you.
artist and very positive and very nice to even just hear you speak. Very nice. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.
Have a good day.